Well, good morning, Airborne. This is a very special Sunday at Airborne Church. This is Pastor's Appreciation Sunday, and we're celebrating that today. And our pastors, Kevin and Beth, are right here in the front row. They're not out somewhere, but they are off today. So we're giving them the chance to just to relax and enjoy the service together. And you've seen them. They were up here on the screen, larger than life. And you guys look big, and you guys look good. So, and they certainly are larger than life figures when it comes to their walk with God and their faith and their willingness to step out and move mountains. So we appreciate that so much. Thanks to you guys, and enjoy your day. So, well, I'm Ivan, and I'm pleased to be here. It's a privilege to stand on this stage, and I don't take it lightly. Married to Cindy. She's my rock. She's the love of my life. 40 years now. So thank you. And then my family. And we do get cleaned up sometimes. That was a recent picture from our daughter's wedding. And congratulations to them on their wedding. 5 grandchildren. So, and they're awesome grandchildren. They're the best looking. They're the smartest. They're well-behaved. And one special little guy, he's our youngest. He's Lux. And you just got to love a face like that. A couple weeks ago, we were at family vacation, and Lux said something that stuck with me, and I thought, yeah, that kid's got wisdom way beyond his years. His grandma takes toys along about the middle of the week. You know, you need a little something to lift them up and give them something new to look at. And she pulled one particular one out of the bag, and he said, "I need that." And I thought, well, that's pretty deep. He has the difference between his wants and his needs already figured out. And anybody knows a need outweighs a want. And in fact, I think the Bible says something about, my God will supply all your needs according to the gifts that are in grandma's bag. It's something like that. So, yeah, my family, I do a lot of things in life, but that's what I live for. Family is important. We are currently in a series called Legends. And this morning, I would like to share some insights from the life of Moses. So when I say Moses, what do you think of? Charlton Heston, of course. Some of you say, Charlton who? Well, let's just say one was real Moses and one played Moses, and they both lived a long time ago. So we think of Moses. We think of a great leader, the 10 Commandments, the parting of the Red Sea, the baby in a Longenberger basket. Yeah, they've been around a while. We think of a righteous man, a very humble man as well. We think of a murderer. Say what? Moses killed somebody? Yeah, he did. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. Moses had 3 seasons in his life. And now Moses lived to be 120 years old. So each season in his life was about 40 years. God's call on Moses began even before he was born. God had chosen Moses for a special purpose. So Moses' first call, the first season of his life, he didn't even have a chance to obey or disobey it. He was just a baby. And the only reason he survived to even answer that call was because of the wisdom of his mom and his sister and the kindness of Pharaoh's daughter that he lived. You see, we don't have a choice in where we're born or who we're born to. We don't get to choose whether we're male or female. Some of the guys are saying, I'm glad I was born male, but not so quick. Not so quick. In Moses' day, all the Israelite babies, all the male Israelite babies were to be drowned in the Nile River. So Moses, an Israelite baby, had to escape the orders of Pharaoh. God had a plan for Moses, and no jealous king could take that away. The river that took the lives of so many innocent babies was the very water that carried Moses to his destiny, into Pharaoh's palace, a place where he could learn the ways of Pharaoh, a place where he could receive the very best care, very best education, very best health care and food available. This was going to be instrumental in his life later on. So the very thing that you think might be drowning you this morning is the thing that might take you to a place where you're supposed to be. We don't know a lot about Moses' young life except to know that God had worked it out, that his own mom was able to help raise him. And she actually, I believe, was in the palace with him. And it's just amazing. You know, God's ways are higher than man's ways, that could work out. And he also was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, which made him royalty. Exodus 2, 11 through 15 says it this way. In the course of time, Moses grew up. Then he went to see his own people, and he watched them suffering under the forced labor. He saw a Hebrew, one of his own people, being beaten by an Egyptian. He looked all around. And when he didn't see anyone, he beat the Egyptian to death, and he hid the body in the sand. When Moses went there the next day, he saw 2 Hebrew men fighting. He asked the one that started the fight, "Why are you beating another Hebrew?" The man asked, "Who made you our ruler and judge? Are you going to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought that everyone knew what had happened. When Pharaoh heard what Moses had done, he tried to have him killed. So Moses fled. Sounds like the plot of a murder mystery. Moses may have said he deserved it, or he had it coming. Does that sound familiar? Probably not the best way to handle the situation. It certainly didn't impress Pharaoh. He wanted to kill him. So Moses got out of town to let things cool down. The choice that Moses made led directly to the second season of his life. Because Moses had to leave because he killed the Egyptian, he fled to the desert, to a place where Pharaoh did not have jurisdiction. He went to a town called Midian. See, he had a choice this time, as we do. The second season in our life, we may choose a career, or we might choose something that's a little bit more on the negative side, but it will have a result in the season of your life. When Pharaoh heard this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now, a priest in Midian had 7 daughters. Okay, single guys, pay attention here. There might be something for you. And they came to draw water and to fill the troughs with water for their father's flocks. Some shepherds came along and drove them away. Now that wasn't very nice. These smelly, stinky shepherds who had been out with their flocks way too long, and any shower that they may have had long passed its expiration date. They were just plain rude to these beautiful girls. But Moses got up and he came to their rescue. Now I want to stop here for a moment. Moses, do you see a character trait in Moses? He hated to see injustice. When the Egyptian taskmaster was beating the Israelite slave, he could not contain himself, and he had to do something about it. Here the shepherds were behaving badly, and they were being rude. And Moses just couldn't take it. He had to get up and do something about it. It says here he rescued them. We will see this character trait in Moses later on when he goes back to Egypt to rescue the Israelites from slavery. So Moses got up and he rescued. He drew the water from the well and carried the buckets to the trough. He took care of making sure the flocks were watered. When the girls returned to their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned early?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flocks." I imagine these sisters were talking over each other. They were so excited, not because they had gotten out of some work, and not even because they returned home early. It was because somebody finally stood up to these shepherds. Someone finally sees the injustice and does something about it. They felt valued. Guys, the ladies in your life need to feel valued. Now, some might be saying, well, what's this story have to do with anything? I don't even know of a sheep farm anywhere, let alone troughs to water the sheep. So what's the hidden meaning here for these guys? Well, it's do the dishes. The rewards will be special. There probably isn't a lady in the house that at some point in your life haven't dreamed of a knight in shining armor coming riding by on a white horse and swooping you up in his arms just in the nick of time, and you ride and you ride and you ride off into the sunset. And some of you guys are looking over and saying, "Who's she riding with?" Okay, ladies, focus. Come on back. There'll be Hallmark movies on Netflix this afternoon. So the father asked, "Where is he? Why did you leave him?" Now understand, any father with 7 daughters is looking for a few good men, if you know what I mean. Invite him to have something to eat. Moses agreed to stay with the man. Well, surprise, surprise. Well, I guess so. Who wouldn't? Lovely ladies and good food sounds like the way to a man's heart. Moses agreed to stay, and the man gave his daughter, Sephora, to Moses in marriage. There you have it, guys. It's not that difficult. Just go sit at the well. Moses spent a lot of time there in Egypt, or in Midian, tending to his father-in-law's sheep in the desert. He has a steady job, a wife, and a couple of boys, all sitting up at his father-in-law's table, eating his food. He is living the good life. I believe at this point, Moses had pretty well forgotten about the slaves in Egypt. See, he was living out here, had settled in pretty well. He has a pretty good thing going on here. And I believe that he still didn't see the bigger picture of what the reason for his time in the desert was. You see, he is being a shepherd of sheep in the desert, being prepared to shepherd God's people in the desert. Finally, one day while tending the sheep in the desert, Moses got his world rocked. He came across a burning bush. Now, the fact that a bush was burning in the desert was not that unusual. It's very hot and very dry. But this particular bush was not being consumed. And that's what drew Moses' attention. Exodus 3:4-11, and when the Lord saw that he had gone over to take a look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers. I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. The land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, and a couple other groups there. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So go now. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Now there's this discussion, this little back and forth that went on between God and Moses as he tried to present arguments as to why he shouldn't be the one to go. But God answered every one of them until Moses was finally willing to go. God said, I will be with you, and this will be a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Verse 13 says, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent you. Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? God's response was, take that walking stick that's in your hand and throw it on the ground. And it turned into a snake. And Moses ran. And God said, go back, pick it up by the tail. And it turned back into a staff. God then said, Moses, stick your hand in your pocket and then remove it. And when he did, his hand was covered with a skin disease and it was all white. God said, Moses, put your hand back in your pocket. And when he returned, his skin was perfect. He said, if they don't believe that, then take some water from the Nile River and pour it on dry ground, and it will turn to blood. So Moses spoke to the Lord. He said, Lord, I have never been a good speaker, and I haven't got any better since you spoke to me. I don't speak well at all. The Lord said to him, who makes human beings able to talk? Who makes them unable to hear or to speak? Who makes them able to see? Who makes them blind? It is I, the Lord. Now go. I will help you speak. I will teach you what to say. But Moses said, Lord, please send somebody else. Hello? Then the Lord became very angry with Moses. He said, what about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on the way to meet you. He will be glad to speak for you. I will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you. He will be like your mouth, and you will be like God to him. But take this walking stick with you. You will be able to do signs with it. The third season of Moses' life, again, he had a choice whether to obey or whether to follow. Moses entered a third season in his life, and when he went to Egypt, he and his brother Aaron asked Pharaoh for the release of the children of Israel. Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused to let the Hebrew slaves go. So God pronounced plagues on Egypt. And the plagues are, he turned the water into blood. There were frogs, lice, flies, livestock pestilence, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and the killing of the firstborn children. Now, after each of these plagues, the Pharaoh would ask Moses to pray to his God and get them to stop. He said, I will let the people go. But as soon as they stopped, his heart was hardened, and he refused to let the people go. So God sent another plague until the very last one, the plague of the killing of the firstborn. That hit right at home. That went right into Pharaoh's home, and his firstborn child was killed. After this plague, the children of Pharaoh finally let the children go. The children of Israel went into the desert and they camped by the Red Sea. Pharaoh's heart was once again hardened. And he sent out all of his army, all of his horses and chariots after the children of Israel, after the slaves that he had just set free. And he surrounded them there on 3 sides. And on the 4th side was the Red Sea. The children of Israel realized that they were pinned down and had no place to go. And they started to complain. They asked Moses, "Why did you bring us out into the desert to die?" Their thinking was they would rather be slaves in Egypt than to die in the desert. They forgot they were on their way to the promised land. So God created a special miracle on their behalf, and he parted the Red Sea, and the children of Israel passed through on dry ground. And when the armies tried to follow them, God waited until they got all the way in, and he let the water come back together. Many times we forget to consider the bigger picture of what God's plan for our lives and what his destiny is for us. When we have a bad day or a bad week, we feel like it's always going to be that way. Let's not forget we are on our way to the promised land, and that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. There will be weapons formed against us, but God has promised they will not prosper. The children of Israel arrived just outside the promised land in just a few days after leaving Egypt. It was not a far trip. And God said to Moses, "Send some men to check out the land. I am giving it to the Israelites." That's what God said. Send one leader from each tribe. So Moses sent 12 men to check out the land of Canaan. He told them where to go and what to check out to see whether the land was able to sustain crops, whether it was good or bad. See what the towns are like. Do they have high walls or not? How is the soil? Is it rich? Are there trees? And he said, do your best to bring back some of the fruit from the land. It was the season for the first ripe grapes. So the men went up and checked out the land. And when they entered into the hill country and into the valleys as Moses had commanded them, they came to one particular valley, and it was ripe with grapes. And they cut one bunch of grapes that was so heavy that they had to put it on a pole between 2 of the men. So they brought back the fruit. After 40 days, the men came back to Moses and Aaron and to the whole community of Israel. The men reported to Moses and Aaron and all the people. They showed them the fruit of the land. It really does have plenty of milk and honey, they said. Okay, everything's going pretty good so far. I believe all 12 of the spies that went into the land were in agreement. This is an awesome place. It is God's promised land after all. But here's where it broke down. Their report continued, but the people who live in there are powerful. Their cities have high walls and are very large. We even saw members of the family line of Anak there. Now, this family line was the line of giants that we hear about and we read about in the Bible. Very, very large human beings. But let's go back to the but. Anytime that God has told us to take new territory, there should be no buts about it. Moses, when he was being called to go back to Egypt to rescue the Israelites, he came off with the but what if? What if they don't listen to me? But what if I can't speak clearly? But what if they doubt that I came from God? And here, the children of Israel were buying into the but what if syndrome. Now, when God decreed that 12 spies should go into the land of Canaan, one from each tribe, I really believe that his intention was that they would come back as cheerleaders, that they would lead their tribe into following Moses, into saying, this is a great land, we can do this. But sadly, 10 of them began to listen to the negative, and they allowed that to come into their minds. 2 of them were faithful, and they believed God's promises, and they saw the positive. Anytime that we start counting on the negative is going to win. So let's challenge this morning is to try to look on the positive. So whenever that started to go downhill, Caleb, the one of the spies that came back with the positive report, he saw where this was going. So he interrupted the men speaking to Moses, and he said, we should go up and take the land. We can certainly do it. May that be our attitude. But the man who went up with him said, we can't attack those people. They are bigger and stronger than we are. The men spread a false report about the land among the Israelites. They said, the land we checked out destroys those who live in it. All the people we saw there are very big and tall. And we saw giants there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. Bingo. There you have it. They were looking through their own eyes. Anytime we look through our own eyes, our eyes will deceive us. We can't see past the giants that are standing in our way. But when we look through God's eyes, it's much different perspective. He always sees the bigger picture. The giants that look so large to us are simply grasshoppers in his sight. God always sees the bigger picture. Anytime we are commanded to take on new territory that God has promised us, and we don't because we listen to a false report, we will experience loss. There is a price to be paid. For the children of Israel, it was spending 40 years in the wilderness when they could have been enjoying the benefits of the promised land. Because they believed a false report and did not enter the promised land, God made a decree that all those over 20 years of age when they left Egypt would never see the promised land, but died in the wilderness. What have we lost or sacrificed the times that we did not step out and occupy the land God has promised? The times that we did not, and the times that we have allowed the giants to stand in our way. The good news here, the goodness of God. God is merciful and he loves each one of us with a never-ending love. He said he has come to rescue the slaves. He has come to restore that which is lost. He has come to bring healing to the hurting and to open the eyes of the blind. He loves us enough to encourage us to see things from his perspective. Then Moses gave a lot of arguments as to why he shouldn't be the one to go. God didn't give up on Moses. God had a lot invested in Moses, and he was not going to give up on him, and he won't give up on you either. God loves you too much to give up on you. All of us here today have been influenced by the way we grew up and where we grew up. In the experiences we've had, the good and the bad. And yes, I said the bad. You know that God can use the bad experiences the plain dumb experiences, and the disasters that we have brought on ourselves. He can take those things and use them to His glory. He can redeem our situations and our lives. He will not give up on you. And much like Moses gained experience in the desert, tending to sheep in preparation to lead God's children through the desert, you have been trained in your line of work or career. God has put you in contact with the people that He wanted you to know. And God has put you through the experiences that He wanted you to have. All this training and experiences combine to form you into the person that you are today and to prepare you for the next season of your life. I believe there are some of us here today who know that the season we're in is about to change. We'd have the worship team come at this time, and would you stand with me? God wants to rock your world. He has a burning bush moment for you. And you are being called out. Too many times we miss out on God's best because we stay in the familiar rather than facing the challenge of taking on new territory. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I believe the greatest mission field is the one that you're in right now with your day-to-day experiences. But I also know that for some of you, that season is about to change. If that is you this morning, I would like to give you opportunity for you to express that so that we can pray together with you as you go through the changing of a season in your life, that you will sense God's leading. Maybe it's stolen territory that you need to take back. Or maybe you need the courage to face the giants that stand in your way between you and the promised land that you are to occupy. If you know this morning, that a season is about to change in your life, you don't need, and you're done with all the excuses, and you're tired of listening to all the but what if, and you're ready to make a step into a new season, you realize that God sees the bigger picture, and He knows the situation that you face today, and He knows where He will bring you out in the future. We, too many times, are like Moses, and when God calls, we offer up all the reasons that we think we're not the right one. We name ourselves inadequate. When God says He is our sufficiency, He will supply all of our needs. We name our situations impossible. When God said, I parted the Red Sea for the children of Israel, I can certainly make a way through whatever you're facing today.